Captain Hyun-woo Kim stood on the bridge of his ship and looked out at the dead world below. The planet had no name in the human records. Just a number, Kepler 442c. It was cold and dark with no life anywhere on its surface, but something about this place made him curious. "Captain, we're getting some strange readings," said So-Young Park, his science officer. She was bent over her instruments, her dark hair falling across her face as she worked. "There's something down there that doesn't match anything we've seen before." Hyun-woo walked over to look at her screen. The Daeon's Pride was a small research ship with only 12 people on board. They had been traveling through space for 3 months, looking for new things to study. Most of the time, they found nothing interesting. But this planet was different. "What kind of readings?" he asked. "Metal. Structures buried deep under the ground. They're arranged in perfect patterns, like someone built them on purpose." "But Captain, if these readings are right, these things are millions of years old." Dongmin Lee, the ship's engineer, came up behind them. He was a big man with strong hands that were always dirty from fixing things. "Did someone say millions of years? That's impossible. Nothing lasts that long." So-Young shook her head. "The scans don't lie. Whatever built these things knew how to make them last forever." Eun-ji Choi, who guided the ship through space, called out from her station. "Captain, I'm picking up energy readings from the surface. Very faint, but they're there. Something down there is still working." Hyun-woo felt his heart beat faster. In all his years exploring space, he had never found anything like this. Most dead worlds were truly dead, with nothing left but rocks and dust. But this place was different. This place had secrets. "Jin-ho, what do you think?" He called to his weapons officer. Jin-ho Yoon was cleaning his sidearm at his station. He was a careful man who never took chances. "I think we should be very careful, Captain. Old things in space are usually dangerous things." But Hyun-woo's curiosity was stronger than his caution. "So-Young, can you tell what these structures are?" "Not from up here. We'd need to go down to the surface and take a closer look." She paused and looked at him. "Captain, I think these might be ruins from an ancient race, a race that was much more advanced than us." The bridge went quiet. Everyone knew the stories about ancient races that had ruled the galaxy long ago. Most people thought they were just stories. But here was proof that something old and powerful had once lived on this dead world. "How big is the structure?" Hyun-woo asked. "It covers an area about 10 kilometers wide. And Captain, it goes deep, really deep. My scans can't even find the bottom." Hyun-woo made his decision. "Prepare a landing team. So-Young, Dongmin, Jin-ho, and myself. We'll take the shuttle down and see what we can find." "Sir," said Eun-ji, "what if it's dangerous? What if whatever killed this world is still down there?" "Then we'll be very careful," Hyun-woo replied. "But we can't pass up a chance like this. If there really are ancient ruins down there, it could change everything we know about the galaxy." 2 hours later, the 4 of them were walking across the surface of the dead world. The sky was dark gray, and the air was thin and cold. Their suits kept them warm and helped them breathe, but the place still felt creepy. Nothing moved except their own shadows. So-Young held a scanner in her hands, following the energy readings deeper into a valley between 2 hills. "The signal is getting stronger. We're close." They walked for another 20 minutes before they saw it. Rising out of the ground like a metal flower was a structure unlike anything humans had ever built. It was smooth and curved, made of a material that seemed to shine with its own inner light. Strange symbols covered its surface, flowing like water across the metal. "My God," whispered Dongmin. "It's beautiful." Jin-ho kept his hand near his weapon, but even he seemed amazed. "How old did you say this was?" "At least 5 million years?" So-Young said, her voice full of wonder. "Maybe older." As they got closer, the structure began to change. The symbols on its surface started to move faster, and a low humming sound filled the air. A doorway appeared, in the smooth metal, opening like a mouth. "Should we go in?" Dongmin asked. Hyun-woo looked at his team. They were all nervous, but they were also excited. This was the kind of discovery that explorers dreamed about. Stay together, don't touch anything unless I say so. They walked through the doorway and found themselves in a large room filled with strange machines. The walls glowed with soft light, and the air was warm and clean. Everything looked new, as if it had been built yesterday instead of millions of years ago. The technology, So Young breathed, it's beyond anything we have. Look at these power readings. This place is generating more energy than our entire ship. In the center of the room stood a tall pillar covered with the flowing symbols. As So Young approached it with her scanner, the symbols began to glow brighter. "Captain," she said, "I think it's responding to us. To humans specifically." "What do you mean?" "The energy patterns. They're changing to match our biosignatures. It's like the machine is learning about us." Before Hyun-woo could stop her, So Young reached out and touched the pillar. The moment her hand made contact, the entire room filled with blinding light. The machines around them hummed louder, and Hyun-woo felt a strange tingling in his head. Images flashed through his mind. He saw great cities floating in space, beings of pure energy moving between the stars, and technologies that could reshape entire worlds. He saw the rise and fall of countless civilizations, all watched over by the ancient race that had built this place. Then he saw something that made his blood run cold. He saw a great war coming, a war that would decide the fate of every living thing in the galaxy. And somehow, he knew that humans would be at the center of it. The light faded, and the room returned to normal. So Young was standing frozen by the pillar, her eyes wide with shock. "What did you see?" Hyun-woo asked. "Everything," she whispered. "I saw everything." "Captain, we need to leave. Now, what we just did, it sent out a signal. A signal that traveled across the entire galaxy. A signal to who? To everyone. And some of them are not going to be happy that humans found this place." Far across the galaxy, in the capital city of the Veltar Empire, machines that had been silent for millions of years suddenly came to life. Warning lights flashed and alarms began to sound. The most powerful race in the galaxy had just learned that a species they considered primitive had activated Forerunner technology. The Veltar did not tolerate rivals. They never had, and they were about to make sure they never would. Supreme Commander Thekalon stood in the center of the war room, his forearms crossed behind his back. The Veltar were tall, thin creatures with gray skin and large black eyes. They had ruled the galaxy for over 10,000 years, and they did not like surprises. "Show me the signal again," he commanded. The hologram in front of him displayed a map of the galaxy. A bright red dot marked the location where the signal had come from. It was in a small, unimportant section of space that belonged to the humans. "The signal matches Forerunner technology," said his aide, a younger Veltar named Kexmal. "But that's impossible. The Forerunners have been dead for millions of years." Thekalon's long fingers tapped against his arm. The Forerunners were the ancient race that had once ruled the galaxy before the Veltar. They had possessed technology that could reshape reality itself. When they had mysteriously disappeared, the Veltar had made sure that no other race could ever find or use their abandoned tools. "How could primitive humans activate Forerunner devices?" Thekalon asked. "We don't know, Supreme Commander. But the signal was definitely sent by human hands." Thekalon walked to the large window that looked out over the Veltar capital city. Millions of his people lived in the tall spires that reached toward the sky. They had built their empire by destroying any race that showed signs of becoming too advanced. It was the only way to keep peace in the galaxy. "The humans are a young species," he said. "They have only been in space for a few hundred years. They should not be able to use technology that we cannot understand." "Perhaps it was an accident," suggested Kexmal. "There are no accidents with Forerunner technology. It only responds to those it deems worthy." Thekalon turned back to face the hologram. "This is a threat that must be eliminated immediately." Across the galaxy, Admiral Zexandra received her orders. She was the best military commander in the Veltar fleet, with over 50 successful campaigns behind her. She had destroyed rebellious colonies, crushed upstart civilizations, and kept the galaxy under Veltar control for 3 decades, but she had never been asked to assemble an armada this large. 10,000 ships? She said into her communicator. Supreme Commander, surely that's excessive for one small human vessel. The humans have activated Forerunner technology, Decalan's voice crackled through the speaker. We cannot take any chances. I want that ship destroyed, along with any trace of what they have found. Zexandra looked out at the massive shipyards, orbiting her command station. Thousands of Veltar warships floated in the darkness, their crews preparing for battle. She had dreadnoughts that could crack planets in half, cruisers that could outrun anything in known space, and fighters that moved like schools of deadly fish. It will take time to gather such a force, she said. You have 1 week. After that, I want the humans to cease to exist. The communication ended, and Zexandra began making calls. She contacted fleet commanders across the galaxy, ordering them to abandon their current missions and report to the staging area. She requisitioned supplies for the largest military operation in Veltar history. She even called in ships from the Home Guard, leaving the capital worlds with minimal protection. The humans had made a terrible mistake, and they were going to pay for it with their lives. Meanwhile, on the dead world of Kepler 442c, Captain Hyun-woo and his team were still trying to understand what they had found. They had returned to the Daeon's Pride, but So Young had insisted on going back to the ruins every day to study the strange machines. The technology is incredible, she told Hyun-woo as they walked through the alien corridors. These machines can manipulate matter at the atomic level. They can create energy from nothing. They can even affect the flow of time itself. But who built all this? Hyun-woo asked. The computer files call them the Forerunners. They were the first race to achieve true mastery over the physical universe. They ruled the galaxy for millions of years before they just disappeared. Where did they go? So Young stopped in front of a wall covered with flowing symbols. I don't think they went anywhere. I think they evolved beyond the need for physical bodies. They became something else, something we can't even imagine. Then why did they leave all this behind? For us? She turned to look at him, her eyes bright with excitement. Captain, I think they left these ruins as a gift. A test. They wanted to see if any other race could be worthy of their legacy. And we passed the test? We activated their machines. We made contact with their computers, that signal we sent out. It wasn't just a radio wave, it was an announcement. A declaration that humanity is ready to inherit Forerunner technology. Han-woo felt a chill run down his spine. So Young, if what you're saying is true, then we've just painted a target on the back of every human in the galaxy. There are races out there that won't want us to have this kind of power. I know, she said quietly. The computer files mention something called the Veltar. They've been suppressing younger races for thousands of years. They won't let us keep what we found. Back on the ship, Eunji was monitoring deep space communications when she picked up something that made her blood run cold. It was a message. In the Veltar language, transmitted on military frequencies, she ran to find Captain Hyun-woo, who was in his quarters writing a report for Earth Command. Captain, she said, bursting through his door. We're in trouble. Big trouble. What is it? I've been monitoring Veltar communications. They're mobilizing their entire fleet. And Captain, they're heading this way. Hyun-woo set down his tablet. How long do we have? Based on their fastest ships, maybe a week. But Captain, it's not just a few ships, it's an armada, thousands of vessels. They're bringing everything they have. To destroy one small research ship? They know what we found down there. They know. We activated Forerunner technology, and they're scared. Han-woo walked to his small window and looked out at the dead world below. Somewhere down there, in those ancient ruins, lay the key to technologies that could change the fate of humanity. But it might also be the thing that got them all killed. Get me a communication link to Earth, he said. Sir, it will take days for a message to reach them. And even if they send help, it will take weeks to get here. Then we're on our own. He turned back to face her. Unji, I want you to start preparing the ship for emergency departure. If the Veltar are bringing an armada, we need to be ready to run. What about the ruins? So Young won't leave them. She thinks there's more to learn down there, and maybe she's right. Maybe there's something in those machines that can help. U.S., but even as he said it, Hyun-woo knew they were facing impossible odds. How could one small human ship stand against the might of the Veltar Empire? How could 12 people hope to survive when thousands of enemy warships were coming to destroy them? Down in the ruins, So Young continued her work, unaware of the approaching danger. The Forerunner machines hummed around her, their ancient circuits processing information at speeds beyond human comprehension. And deep within their memory banks, programs that had waited for millions of years began to wake up. The Forerunners had indeed left gifts for their successors, but they had also left guardians, protectors that would activate when their chosen inheritors were threatened. The galaxy was about to learn that some sleeping giants should never be awakened. The Veltar Armada arrived like a storm of metal and death. 10,000 ships dropped out of hyperspace around the dead world, their weapons already charging for battle. Admiral Zexandra stood on the bridge of her flagship, a massive dreadnought, called the Star Crusher, and looked at the small human vessel floating near the planet. "That's it?" she asked her tactical officer. "That tiny ship is what required an entire armada?" "Sensors confirm it's the source of the Forerunner signal," the officer replied. "The ship is called the Daeon's Pride, 12 crew members. Basic. Shields and weapons." Zexandra shook her head. The ship looked like a toy compared to her dreadnought. She had brought enough firepower to destroy 100 worlds, and the humans had nothing but a small research vessel. "Open a communication channel," she ordered, on the bridge of the Daeon's Pride. Captain Hyun-woo watched the massive fleet surround his ship. His hands shook as he counted the enemy vessels. There were more ships out there than he had ever seen in one place. "Captain," said Unji, her voice tight with fear, "they're trying to communicate with us. Put them through." The main screen flickered and Admiral Zexandra's face appeared. She was tall and thin like all Veltar, with gray skin and large black eyes that seemed to look right through him. "Human vessel," she said, her voice cold and harsh, "you have violated galactic law by activating Forerunner technology. Surrender immediately and prepare to be destroyed." Hyun-woo stood up straighter. "Admiral, we are peaceful explorers. We have not violated any laws. We were just studying ancient ruins. The Forerunners left their technology for the Veltar Empire. To guard? No other race is permitted to use it? You will surrender now, or we will destroy you. We haven't hurt anyone. We just want to learn." Zexandra's expression did not change. "Learning is dangerous for primitive species. The galaxy is safer when young races know their place. You have 1 minute to surrender." The communication ended and Hyun-woo looked around his bridge. His crew was staring at him, waiting for orders. But what orders could he give? They had no weapons that could fight a fleet this size. They had no shields that could protect them from this much firepower. "Captain," said Jinho, "maybe we should surrender. They might let us live if we cooperate." "The Veltar don't take prisoners," said So Young, who had just arrived on the bridge. "I've been reading their history in the Forerunner database. They destroy any race that threatens their power." "Then what do we do?" asked Dong Dashmin. Before Hyun-woo could answer, alarms began ringing throughout the ship. Unji looked at her instruments with confusion. "Captain, something's happening on the planet's surface." "The ruins are dot. They're doing something." On the main screen, they could see the dead world below them. Bright lights were appearing all across its surface, forming patterns that stretched from pole to pole. The ancient Forerunner installation was waking up. "So Young, what's happening down there?" "The machines are responding to the threat," she said, her fingers flying over her console. "Captain, I think the Forerunner technology is trying to protect us." "That's impossible." "No, it's not. The Forerunners designed their systems to recognize their chosen inheritors, and we're the ones who activated their machines. In their programming, we're their rightful heirs." A new voice suddenly filled the bridge. It was not human or Veltar, but something else entirely. It spoke in perfect English, but with an accent that seemed to come from another time. Human vessel Dayan's Pride. This is Forerunner Defense Protocol 7. You are under our protection. Please maintain your current position. Admiral Zexandra watched the lights appear on the planet's surface with growing alarm. She had studied Forerunner technology for her entire career, but she had never seen anything like this. "What are those lights?" she demanded. "Unknown, Admiral. But power readings from the planet are off the charts. Whatever's down there is generating more energy than our entire fleet. Impossible. The Forerunners have been dead for millions of years. Admiral, we're detecting massive gravitational anomalies around the human ship. Something is forming a protective field around them." Zexandra looked at the tactical display and felt her blood run cold. A shimmering barrier had appeared around the small human vessel, and her sensors could not penetrate it. "Fire on the human ship," she ordered. "All weapons." The Star Crusher and a dozen other dreadnoughts opened fire. Beams of pure energy that could melt through the hull of any known ship struck the barrier around the Dayan's Pride, but instead of destroying the small vessel, the beams simply disappeared, absorbed by the mysterious field. "Admiral, our weapons have no effect. The barrier is absorbing everything we throw at it. Then we use more weapons. All ships, concentrate fire on the human vessel." Thousands of Veltar warships opened fire at once. The space around the Dayan's Pride lit up like a star as beam after beam struck the protective field. But the small ship remained untouched, floating safely inside its cocoon of ancient technology on the bridge of the Dayan's Pride. The crew watched in amazement as the most powerful fleet in the galaxy failed to scratch their ship. "How is this possible?" asked Dongmin. "Forerunner technology," said So Young. "It's beyond anything we understand. Their machines can manipulate the basic forces of the universe. But why is it protecting us?" "Because we're the ones they've been waiting." FOR. The Forerunners didn't disappear. They evolved beyond physical form. But before they left, they prepared gifts for the race that would inherit their technology. That race is us. Captain Hyanwu felt something strange happening to his mind. Images were flowing through his thoughts, showing him how to operate systems he had never seen before. It was as if the ship itself was teaching him. "Captain," said Yunji, "our ship is changing. New systems are coming online. I'm reading weapon signatures that I don't recognize." "Weapons? We're a research vessel." "Not anymore," said the Forerunner. Voice: "You are now a guardian vessel, equipped to protect human space from those who would do you harm." The hull of the Dayan's Pride began to shift and flow like liquid metal. New structures grew from its surface, sleek and deadly. The small research ship was transforming into something far more powerful. Admiral Zexandra watched the transformation with growing horror. The tiny human vessel was becoming something else, something that her instruments could not fully scan or understand. "Admiral, we're detecting new energy signatures from the human ship. Power levels are increasing exponentially." "What kind of weapons are they mounting?" "Unknown. The technology doesn't match anything in our database." Zexandra clenched her four hands into fists. She had brought the largest fleet in Veltar history to destroy one small ship, and now that ship was becoming something that might be able to fight back. "All ships maintain firing pattern. Whatever they're doing, we stop it now," but it was too late. The transformation was complete, and the Dayan's Pride was no longer just a research vessel. It was something new, something that combined human courage with Forerunner technology, and it was about to show the Veltar Empire what happened when you threatened humanity's future. "Captain," said Jinho, "I'm reading weapon systems that I've never seen before. They're incredible." "So Young, can you understand how they work?" "The ship is teaching me," she said, her eyes wide with wonder. "Captain, these weapons don't just destroy targets. They can rewrite the laws of physics around them." The Forerunner voice spoke again. "Human Captain, the hostile fleet will not cease their attack. Permission to defend?" Hanwu looked at his crew. They were still the same 12 people who had started this journey as simple explorers. But now they had the power of an ancient civilization at their fingertips. "We defend ourselves," he said. The galaxy was about to learn that some species should never be underestimated. The first Veltar dreadnought died in a flash of impossible light. One moment the Starbreaker was firing its massive weapons at the human ship, and the next moment it simply ceased to exist. There was no explosion, no debris field. The enormous warship just vanished as if it had never been there at all. Admiral Zexandra stared at her tactical display in shock. "What happened to the Starbreaker?" "Unknown, Admiral. One moment it was there, the next it just wasn't. Sensors show no trace of it anywhere." On the bridge of the Daeon's Pride, Jinho looked at his new weapon controls with amazement. The Forerunner systems had shown him how to operate weapons that could erase matter from existence itself. "Captain, I barely touched the controls and that ship just disappeared. Where did it go?" asked Dongmin. "Nowhere," said So Young, studying her readings. "The weapon didn't destroy the ship. It removed it from this dimension entirely. It's still intact somewhere else, but not in our reality." Captain Hein Wu felt sick to his stomach. He had just been responsible for making an entire ship full of living beings disappear. How many crew were on that vessel? "About 3,000, So Young sighed quietly. 3,000 people just gone. "Captain," said the Forerunner voice, "the hostile forces show no signs of retreat. They continue to fire upon you. Additional defensive measures are required. Can't we just leave? Can't we run away?" "The barrier technology requires proximity to the planetary installation. If you attempt to depart, the protective field will collapse and you will be destroyed." Han Wu looked around his bridge. His crew was scared, but they were also determined. They had not asked for this fight, but they would not give up without defending themselves. "Admiral," called Yunji, "more ships are moving to attack positions." On her flagship, Admiral Zexandra was trying to understand what she was facing. She had lost one of her most powerful ships to a weapon that should not have existed. All ships fall back to maximum range. Use long-distance weapons only. "Admiral, the human ship is moving." The transformed Daeon's Pride was no longer content to simply defend itself. It was advancing toward the Veltar fleet, moving faster than any ship that size should have been able to move. Impossible. How can they accelerate that quickly without crushing their crew? The ship appears to be generating its own gravitational field. The occupants are not experiencing the acceleration. Zexandra watched as the single human vessel moved through her fleet like a predator among prey. Every time it targeted one of her ships, that vessel simply vanished from existence. Her mighty dreadnoughts, each one capable of destroying planets, were being erased like drawings on a blackboard. "All ships, concentrate fire on that vessel, everything we have." Thousands of weapons fired at once, creating a storm of energy that lit up the darkness of space. But the human ship moved through the barrage as if the deadly beams were nothing more than gentle rain. Its Forerunner shields absorbed every shot and converted the energy into power for its own systems. "Admiral, our weapons are making their ship stronger. Every time we hit it, its power levels increase." "Then how do we fight something like that?" On the human ship, So Young was making a discovery that changed everything. "Captain, I'm reading energy signatures from across the galaxy. The Forerunner installations on other worlds are waking up." "Other worlds? Hundreds of them? Maybe thousands." The Forerunners didn't just build one facility. They built a network that spans the entire galaxy. And our activation of this site has awakened all of them. What does that mean? It means we're not alone anymore. Every Forerunner site in the galaxy is now under human control. And Captain, some of those sites have capabilities that make our ship look like a toy. Across the galaxy on a world called Vex Prime, the Veltar Military Command Center suddenly went dark. Ancient machines that had been buried for millions of years rose from the ground and began dismantling the Veltar installation piece by piece. The beings who had built their empire on suppressing younger races were learning that they had made a terrible mistake. Admiral Zexandra received the first reports of attacks on Veltar worlds just as she lost her fifth dreadnought to the human ship. Admiral, we're receiving distress calls from across the Empire. Our military bases are under attack by unknown forces. What kind of forces? Machines, Admiral. Ancient machines that our weapons cannot damage. Zexandra realized with growing horror that she was not just fighting one human ship. She was fighting the awakened legacy of the most powerful civilization that had ever existed. All ships retreat, full retreat, but it was too late. The space around her fleet had become a trap. Forerunner technology was bending the laws of physics, creating gravitational anomalies that prevented her ships from escaping. Admiral, we cannot engage hyperspace drives. Something is interfering with our engines. Then we fight our way out. But fighting was useless. The human ship moved through her remaining vessels like death itself, erasing dreadnoughts and cruisers. With casual ease? In less than an hour, Admiral Zexandra had lost half of her entire fleet on the Dayan's Pride. Captain Han-Wu was struggling with what he had become. The Forerunner technology was changing more than just his ship. It was changing him and his crew as well. Captain, said So Young, I can feel the other installations across the galaxy. It's like they're all connected to my mind. I can feel them too, said Hunji. There are so many of them. On dead worlds, hidden on populated planets floating in deep space. The Forerunners built an empire that we never even knew existed. And now it's ours, said Dongmin. The whole network is responding to our commands. Jinho looked up from his weapon controls. Captain, I don't think we're entirely human anymore. The technology is changing us, making us into something more. Haiyan Wu could feel it too. His mind was expanding, able to process information at speeds that should have been impossible. He could sense the movement of every ship in the Veltar fleet, understand the function of every system on his transformed vessel, and feel the pulse of Forerunner installations across the galaxy. So Young, what's happening to us? Evolution, she said simply. The Forerunners didn't just leave us their technology. They left us the ability to become like them, to transcend our physical limitations and become something greater. But we're still human, aren't we? We're human plus something more. We still have our emotions, our memories, our bonds with each other. But now we also have the power to reshape reality itself. The remaining Veltar ships were trying desperately to escape, but the Forerunner technology would not let them go. One by one, they were being disabled and their crews transported to the surface of the dead world below. Captain, said the Forerunner. Voice, the hostile fleet has been neutralized. What are your orders regarding the survivors? Han-Wu looked at the tactical display. Thousands of Veltar were now stranded on the planet's surface, their ships gone, their empire crumbling around them. We don't kill prisoners, he said. We're still human enough for that. Admiral Zexandra found herself standing in the ruins where the humans had first activated the Forerunner technology. Her flagship had been one of the last ships to be disabled, and now she was face to face with the beings who had just destroyed the most powerful fleet in galactic history. Captain Haiyan Wu walked toward her, flanked by his crew. They still looked human, but there was something different about them now. Their eyes held depths that spoke of knowledge beyond mortal understanding. Admiral, he said, your empire made a mistake. You thought you could suppress the development of younger races forever, but the galaxy doesn't belong to the Veltar. It belongs to all the species that call it home. You don't understand, Zexandra said. There are forces in this galaxy that require strong leadership. Without the Veltar Empire to maintain order, chaos will consume everything. Maybe it's time for a new kind of order, one based on cooperation instead of domination. You have no idea what you've unleashed. The power you now wield will corrupt you just as it corrupted others before you. So Young stepped forward. The Forerunners faced the same temptation. They could have used their power to rule the galaxy forever. Instead, they chose to evolve. Beyond the need for physical dominance, they became something greater. And that's what we're going to do, said Haiyan Wu. We're going to use this power to protect the innocent and guide the galaxy toward a better future. Zexandra laughed bitterly. 12 humans against an entire galaxy? You cannot change the nature of the universe with good intentions. Maybe. Not, Hyanwu admitted, but we're going to try. Above them, the transformed Daeon's Pride waited in orbit, its new form sleek and deadly. Across the galaxy, Forerunner installations continued to awaken, waiting for their human inheritors to claim their legacy. The age of Veltar dominance was ending. The age of humanity was about to begin. Supreme Commander Thecalon stood in his command center and watched his empire die. Reports flooded in from across Veltar space as ancient machines rose from planets that had been under his control for thousands of years. Military bases that had taken centuries to build were being dismantled in hours. Fleets that had conquered dozens of star systems were being scattered like leaves in a storm. How many worlds have we lost? He asked his aide. Kex single quotes Mole consulted his tablet with shaking hands. 47 confirmed, Supreme Commander, maybe more. Communications are breaking down across the Empire. 47 worlds in 3 days. Thecalon's voice was hollow. 10,000 years of expansion, gone in 3 days. The Forerunner. Machines are not just destroying our installations. They're scanning our computer systems, learning everything about our empire. They know where every base is located, every fleet position, every supply depot. Thecalon walked to the great window that looked out over his capital city. For his entire life he had believed that the Veltar were the rightful rulers of the galaxy. They had the strongest military, the most advanced technology, the wisdom that came from millennia of experience. How could 12 primitive humans destroy everything his people had built? Show me the tactical display, he ordered. The hologram that appeared showed the galaxy as Thecalon had never seen it before. Red dots marked the locations of Forerunner installations that were now active. There were thousands of them, scattered across every spiral arm, hidden on worlds both dead and living. The humans had not just found one ancient ruin. They had awakened an entire network of unimaginable power. The installations are working together, Kexmo explained. They share information instantaneously across the galaxy. When our forces attack one site, all the others immediately know our tactics and prepare countermeasures. What about our allies? Surely other races will join us against this human threat. Supreme Commander, most of our subject races are celebrating. They see this as liberation from Veltar rule. Some are even openly joining the humans. Thecalon closed his eyes. The Veltar had maintained control through fear and superior firepower. But fear meant nothing to machines that could not be destroyed. And their firepower was useless against technology that absorbed energy attacks and grew stronger. Meanwhile, on the world where it had all begun, Captain Hyanwu was learning to cope with his new responsibilities. The transformed Daeon's Pride was no longer his only ship. Forerunner installations across the galaxy were constructing new vessels, each one designed with human needs in mind, but powered by ancient technology. Captain, said So Young, we have a problem. 3 different alien races have sent diplomatic missions asking for our protection. They want us to free them from Veltar control. What do we tell them? That's up to you. The Forerunner network recognizes you as the primary human authority. Whatever you decide becomes policy for the entire galaxy. Hanwu rubbed his temples. 3 days ago, he had been a simple explorer. Now, he was apparently the leader of the most powerful force the galaxy had ever seen. I never wanted to rule anyone. You don't have to rule, said Dongmin, but you do have to lead. These races have been oppressed by the Veltar for centuries. They're looking to us for guidance. What if we make mistakes? What if we become just like the Veltar, using our power to control others? Then the Forerunner technology will abandon us, said So Young. I've been studying their programming. The network only serves those who use power responsibly. If we become tyrants, the machines will shut down and choose new inheritors. That's both comforting and terrifying. Yunji looked up from her communications console. Captain, we're receiving a message from the Veltar capital world. It's from Supreme Commander Thekalon himself. Put it through. The main screen showed the interior of a Veltar command center. Thekalon stood in the center, looking older and more tired than Hyan Wu had expected. Human Captain, the Veltar leader said, I request a meeting. There are things you need to understand about the galaxy, things that will help you avoid the mistakes we made. Why should I trust you? Because your people are about to inherit problems that we have been dealing with for 10,000 years. There are threats in this galaxy that require unity to face. Without proper guidance, your species will repeat our errors. Han Wu looked at his crew. They had all changed since the Forerunner awakening. They were still human, but they could now process information at superhuman speeds and understand technologies that should have been beyond their comprehension. Where do you want to meet? Neutral space. I will come with a single ship and a small diplomatic team. I ask only for the chance to share what we have learned. Very well. But Supreme Commander, if this is a trap, your empire will not survive the consequences. Captain, my empire is already dead. I have nothing left to lose. The meeting took place on a small moon in an uninhabited system. Thekalon arrived as promised with only a single vessel and a handful of advisors. Captain Hyan Wu met him in a hastily constructed building, accompanied by his core crew, the Veltar Supreme Commander. Looked even more tired in person. His gray skin had a sickly pallor, and his large black eyes seemed haunted by recent events. You destroyed my fleet in less than a day, he said without preamble. You dismantled 47 worlds in 3 days. The Veltar Empire, which has existed for 10 millennia, is collapsing around me? You attacked us first, Hyan Wu replied. We were just defending ourselves. Yes, and we made a terrible mistake, but Captain, we made that mistake for good reasons. There are things in this galaxy that young races do not understand. Threats that require experienced leadership to face. What kind of threats? Thekalon activated a holographic display. The galaxy is not empty, Captain. There are things out there in the dark spaces between stars. Ancient entities that feed on the life force of entire civilizations. Machine intelligences that seek to convert all organic life into digital servants. Dimensional parasites that can consume entire star systems. And you've been fighting these threats? For 10,000 years. Every race we conquered, every world we controlled, was part of a defensive strategy. We needed unity of command to coordinate the galaxy's defenses. So Young studied the holographic data. Why didn't you just explain this to the other races? Why rule through fear instead of cooperation? Because cooperation is fragile and these threats are patient. They wait for civilizations to become complacent, to lower their guard. Only constant vigilance and absolute authority can maintain the defenses we need. And now those defenses are gone, said Jinho. Yes, your Forerunner machines are powerful, but they are designed for creation and protection, not for the kind of warfare we face. The entities I speak of exist partially outside normal space-time. They can influence minds across galactic distances. They can corrupt entire species from within. Hyan Wu felt a chill run down his spine. Are you saying we've made the galaxy defenseless? I'm saying you have inherited a responsibility that you do not yet understand. The Forerunners faced these same threats millions of years ago. It's part of why they evolved beyond physical form. They could not fight these entities while remaining vulnerable to their influence. So what do? You learn quickly? You build new alliances based on truth instead of fear. And you prepare for battles that will make our recent conflict look like a minor disagreement. As if summoned by his words, alarms began ringing throughout the facility. Yunji checked her instruments with growing alarm. Captain, I'm reading massive distortions in space-time. Something is coming out of hyperspace, but it's not using any technology I recognize. Through the windows of the meeting facility, they could see stars beginning to dim in a particular section of sky. Something vast and dark was blotting out. The light moving toward their location with purpose. It seems, said Thekalon grimly, that our conversation has attracted attention. Captain, your first real test is about to begin. The darkness continued to spread across the sky, and somewhere in the depths of space, Something that should not have existed began to laugh with voices that came from dimensions humans had never. Imagine. The Veltar had been right about one thing. There were indeed worse things in the galaxy than their empire. And now those things were coming to see what had happened to their old enemies. Hyun-woo looked at his crew, then at the former Supreme Commander who had just become an unlikely ally. Well, he said, trying to keep his voice steady, I guess we're about to learn what the Forerunners were really preparing us for. Above them, the transformed Daeon's Pride powered up its weapons systems, ready to face whatever was emerging from the darkness between stars. The thing that emerged from the darkness was not a ship. It was not a creature. It was something that existed in multiple dimensions at once, visible to the human eye only as a constantly shifting shadow that hurt to look at directly. What is that? Captain Hyun-woo asked, his voice barely a whisper. Supreme Commander Thekalon was backing away from the windows, his gray skin even paler than before. That is a void devourer. One of the entities we have been fighting for 10,000 years. They feed on the life energy of entire star systems. How do we fight something like that? You don't fight it. You survive it, and hope that it loses interest before it consumes everything you care about. But the Forerunner voice that had been guiding them spoke with calm certainty. Human Captain, this entity presents no threat to you. Observe. The dark shape in space suddenly stopped moving toward them. It writhed and twisted as if in pain, then began to retreat back toward the edges of the star system. Impossible, breathed Thekalon. They never retreat, never. The Forerunner network includes defensive systems designed specifically for extradimensional threats, the voice explained. These entities cannot approach worlds protected by our technology. So Young was studying her readings with amazement. Captain, the Forerunner installations are generating some kind of field that exists in multiple dimensions. The creature can't get close without being torn apart. The Forerunners faced these threats long ago, the voice continued. They created defenses that have protected the galaxy for millions of years. The Veltar simply took credit for victories that were not their own. Thekalon sank into a chair, his forearms hanging limply at his sides. 10,000 years of warfare. 10,000 years of making ourselves into monsters to protect the galaxy, and all this time the defenses were already there. You didn't know, said Hyun-woo gently. You were trying to protect your people the only way you understood. We destroyed so many civilizations, crushed so many dreams. All for nothing, not for nothing, said Dongmin. You kept the galaxy united, maybe not in the best way, but you kept it together. That has value. Over the following weeks, the truth about the galaxy's defenses spread to every inhabited world. The Veltar Empire officially dissolved itself, with many former territories choosing to form their own governments or joining the growing alliance of worlds that look to humanity for leadership. Captain Hyun-woo found himself in the strange position of being the most powerful individual in the galaxy while commanding only a single ship. The Forerunner network responded to his crew's wishes, but it would not act without their conscious decision. We need to establish some kind of government, said Yoonji during one of their daily planning sessions. Races across the galaxy are asking us to make decisions about trade routes, territorial disputes, resource allocation. We can't manage an entire galaxy from the bridge of one ship. I don't want to become an emperor, Hyun-woo said firmly. That's exactly what we fought against. Then we create something different, suggested So Young. A council of representatives from different species. We use the Forerunner network to facilitate communication and coordination, but the actual decisions are made democratically. What? About enforcement. What happens when someone breaks the rules? Jin-ho looked up from the weapon systems he was studying. The Forerunner technology only responds to those who use power responsibly. If a species or individual starts oppressing others, they lose access to the network. That's a pretty strong incentive to behave. And if someone attacks a member of the Alliance, then they face the same fate as the Veltar Armada, Jin-ho said grimly. 12 humans with Forerunner technology destroyed the most powerful fleet In galactic history, I think that sends a clear message. Admiral Zexandra, who had become an unofficial liaison between humanity and the former Veltar territories, provided a different perspective during their next meeting. The galaxy is not used to freedom, she warned. Many species have been under Veltar control for so long that they don't know how to govern themselves. There will be conflicts, wars, chaos. Growing pains, said Hyun-woo. Better than the alternative. Is it? How many billions will die in these wars? How many civilizations will destroy themselves before they learn to cooperate? Probably fewer than died under Veltar rule over the past 10,000 years, So Young pointed out. At least now they have the chance to choose their own path. 6 months after the fall of the Veltar Empire, representatives from over 300 species gathered on a neutral world to establish the Galactic Cooperative. Unlike the old empire, membership was voluntary, and each species had an equal voice in making decisions. Captain Hyun-woo gave the opening address, still wearing the simple uniform of a research ship captain despite being the most powerful individual in known space. We gather here not as conquerors and conquered, but as neighbors sharing the same galaxy, he said. Humanity did not seek the power we now wield. We found it by accident while exploring a dead world. But having found it, we choose to use it responsibly. The Forerunner Network will defend any member of this cooperative from external threats. It will facilitate communication and trade between distant worlds. It will share knowledge and technology to help all species advance. But it will not be used to force anyone to join us or to settle disputes through violence. We invite you to be part of something new, something based on cooperation instead of domination, something that honors the diversity of life in this galaxy, while working together for the common good. The response was not unanimous. Some species, particularly those that had benefited from Veltar rule, were suspicious of human intentions. Others worried that humanity would eventually become corrupted by power, just as the Veltar had been, but most recognized that this was the best chance the galaxy had ever had for true peace and prosperity. 1 year later, Captain Hyun-woo stood on the bridge of the Daeon's Pride as it orbited Earth. His ship had been transformed beyond recognition, but his crew remained the same 12 people who had started this incredible journey. Any regrets? Asked So Young. About finding the ruins? No, about what happened to the Veltar Empire. Sometimes. They were trying to protect the galaxy in their own way. They were trying to control it, corrected Jinho. There's a difference. Maybe, but Thakalon was right about one thing. We've inherited problems that we don't fully understand yet. There are still threats out there in the dark spaces between stars. Then we'll face them when they come, said Dongmin. Together, Yunji looked up from her navigation console. Captain, we're receiving a priority message from the Galactic Cooperative Council. They want us to investigate strange readings from the Andromeda Galaxy. Another ancient civilization? Unknown. But the readings are similar to what we found. On Kepler-442c. Hyun-woo smiled. Despite everything that had happened, despite the responsibility he now carried, he was still an explorer at heart. Set course for the edge of the galaxy? Let's see what's out there. The Daeon's Pride turned away from Earth and began its journey toward the unknown. Behind them, the galaxy continued its slow transformation from empire to cooperative, from subjects to citizens, from fear to hope. The age of Veltar dominance was truly over. The age of galactic cooperation had begun. And somewhere in the dark between galaxies, ancient machines that had waited for millions of years began to stir, drawn by the signal of a species that had proven itself worthy of the Forerunner legacy. Humanity had passed its first test. But the universe was vast, and there were always new challenges waiting for those brave enough to seek them out. Captain Hyun-woo Kim and his crew of 12 had started their journey as simple explorers. They had become the guardians of galactic civilization, and their greatest adventures were still ahead of them. The stars awaited, vast and full of promise, ready to reveal their secrets to those who dared to look.